Stop paying for expensive weed killer. This simple trick might be all you need.
Stop paying for weed killer. This simple trick works. The camera opens on a shelf lined with weed killer bottles, sprays, granules, concentrates, each one promising to be the final solution. A hand reaches for another bottle, then pauses. Before spending another $1 on weed killer, it's worth looking at something already sitting in the kitchen. Not a new product, not a stronger chemical, something ordinary, something already owned, something that costs nothing extra to use. The answer isn't revealed yet. First, the real problem needs to be understood because most people are solving the wrong part of it. Every homeowner knows the cycle. A few weeds appear, so a bottle gets purchased. Weeks later, more weeds appear, so another bottle gets purchased. The shelf fills up, the yard doesn't really change, and the spending never stops. The mistake most people make isn't buying weed killer. It's treating every weed the same way, no matter where it's growing. But weeds don't all grow in the same conditions, and that difference matters more than most people realize. Some weeds push up through the narrow gaps in a sidewalk. Others creep along the edge of a driveway. Some settle between garden stones along a fence line or at the base of a wall. And some grow directly inside the lawn. Right alongside the grass, someone is trying to protect. Treating all of these the same way is exactly why so much money gets wasted, and why the weeds keep coming back anyway. For weeds growing in cracks, joints, and hard surfaces, the places without grass to protect, there's a method that's been used for generations, long before spray bottles existed on store shelves: boiling water. It sounds almost too simple, but the logic behind it is straightforward. Boiling water delivers a sudden, intense burst of heat directly to the plant's tissue. That heat damages the cell structure, and the visible part of the weed typically wilts and dies within a day or two. It's worth being honest here. Boiling water isn't a guaranteed permanent fix. Some tougher, deep-rooted weeds may survive underground and send up new growth later. This isn't a miracle cure. It's a low-cost, chemical-free option for one very specific type of location: hard, non-grass surfaces where nothing else is trying to grow. The camera moves in close on a sidewalk crack where a handful of small weeds have pushed their way up through the concrete. A tighter shot shows exactly where the base of the weed meets the crack. This is the target zone. Cut to a kettle on the stove, water coming to a rolling boil. Steam rises steadily. Carefully, the boiling water is poured directly onto the base of the weed, right where the stem meets the crack. Precision matters here. The goal is to soak the base and root zone, not just splash the leaves. A time-lapse shows the transformation. Within a few hours, the leaves begin to droop. By the next day, the plant has visibly wilted and browned. The area is then swept clean, leaving the crack empty. One important note has to be said clearly at this stage. Boiling water causes serious burns. This method should never be attempted around children or pets. And extreme care is needed when carrying and pouring water that's just come off the stove. This isn't a step to rush. Here's the part that gets skipped in a lot of life hack videos. And it's the part that actually matters most. Never pour boiling water directly onto healthy grass. Boiling water doesn't know the difference between a weed and a blade of grass. It kills plant tissue indiscriminately. Pour it onto a lawn, and it won't just take out the weed. It will scorch a dead patch into the grass around it, creating a bare spot that takes far longer to fix than the weed problem ever did. The same caution applies near flower beds, vegetable gardens, or any plant with roots close to the surface. If there's something growing nearby that's meant to be kept alive, boiling water is the wrong tool for that spot. So what actually works inside the lawn, where grass and weeds are competing for the same space? That calls for a completely different approach. Step 1. Manual removal. For weeds growing inside grass, hand pulling remains one of the most reliable, zero-cost methods available. It works best when the soil is moist, after rain or watering, because the ground loosens and the root releases more easily. The camera shows a close-up. Fingers gripping the weed low, near the soil line, pulling slowly and steadily, rather than yanking. Getting as much of the root out as possible reduces the chance of the same weed regrowing from a broken stub left behind. Step 2. Thickening the lawn. This is the part most people overlook, and it's arguably the more important long-term strategy. A dense, healthy lawn does something a single afternoon of weeding never can. it competes. Thick grass shades the soil surface, which limits the sunlight new weed seeds need to germinate. It also reduces the amount of open, bare soil available for weeds to take root in the first place. In other words, a lawn that's already full doesn't leave much room for anything else to move in. This means the real fix isn't only about removing what's already there, it's about making the environment less inviting for the next wave of weeds to begin with. Here's a mindset shift worth sitting with. Pulling a weed or pouring boiling water on it removes the visible problem, but it doesn't address why that weed showed up in the first place. Weeds tend to take hold where conditions favor them. Bare patches of soil, thin or stressed grass, overwatering, mowing too short, compacted ground, or areas that don't get enough sunlight. None of these are guaranteed causes in every yard, and every lawn is different, but they're common contributing factors worth paying attention to. Addressing the underlying condition rather than just the weed sitting on top of it is what actually reduces how often this problem returns. Before reaching for another bottle off the shelf, it's worth pausing on one simple question. Is a chemical treatment actually needed here, or is there a lower cost option that fits the situation better? Constantly buying another product isn't automatically the better solution. Sometimes the better solution was already available. A kettle of water, a few minutes of hand pulling, or a small adjustment to a watering and mowing routine. More spending doesn't always mean better results. Sometimes it just means a fuller trash bin of empty bottles and the same weeds showing up again next month. To make this simple to remember, here's a clear breakdown. Boiling water can be considered for sidewalk and pathway cracks, gaps between patio stones or pavers, driveway edges and joints where no grass is growing. Boiling water should be avoided on healthy, established grass, areas close to garden plants meant to be kept, root zones of anything intentionally planted nearby. A couple of practical notes worth keeping in mind. Repeated pouring in the same spot can affect nearby soil and drainage over time, and hot water poured onto certain surface materials may cause minor damage. This method is best used sparingly and with attention to the surface involved, not as a routine, large-scale treatment. No single method solves every weed problem, and it wouldn't be honest to suggest otherwise. Here's a quick summary depending on the situation. For small, isolated weeds, hand pulling remains the simplest option. For cracks and hard surfaces, boiling water offers a low-cost, chemical-free approach. For lawns, a combination of manual removal and improving grass density through proper mowing and watering habits tends to produce better long-term results than spot treating alone. For larger infestations that keep spreading despite these efforts, identifying the specific weed first is the right next step, followed by considering a targeted product suited to that particular weed, always following the label instructions carefully. The video closes back where it started. A shelf of weed killer bottles, this time with a kettle sitting beside it. Before spending money on another weed killer, it's worth taking a moment to look at where the weed is actually growing. The right answer isn't always the next bottle on the shelf. Sometimes it's already in the kitchen.